Kena Bridge of Spirits was announced for the Nintendo Switch 2 about a month or so ago, and it was only a week ago that Ember Lab announced the release date.
He's so fast!
So now it's out and playable on the Nintendo Switch 2. This game actually came out back in 2021 as an exclusive PlayStation title. Well, it was actually supposed to be a PS5 exclusive, and then it ended up coming out for PS4 on the same day, and then to PC later on, and now it's on Nintendo. You know what captivated me about this title back then was its DreamWorks-like art style. That's the very first thing I noticed, and that's what sold me initially back then. I bought it for my PS4 and I played it a little bit, but because I was doing so many other things back then, and as far as YouTube goes, I was focusing mainly on Dragon Ball FighterZ at the time, I decided that it was one of those games that I was gonna shelve for a little while and go back to later. And then I ended up getting rid of my PlayStation 4, plus the game was very hard for me at the time, and I just didn't feel like putting in the time. Going in, I expected a Zelda-like, almost carefree adventure, and I ended up getting what I described at the time as a Souls-like boss rush game. Mind you, I never got that far, and I'm already further in on the Switch 2 edition than I ever got on PS4. On the PS4, I think I stopped playing at the boss fight where you have to fight a bunch of tree monkeys first, and then you transition to the real boss of that fight. I guess you can say I was filtered by this game when I first played it back in 2021. But that was a while ago, and I always knew if it came to the Nintendo Switch 2, I would buy it immediately. I always thought it was capable of running on the old Nintendo Switch as well, with compromises of course, but having it on the Nintendo Switch 2 4 years later, I can't really complain. And so now that I've spent a good amount of time on it, I can tell you my thoughts. And needless to say, all the footage that you're seeing in this video is going to be my own footage from the Nintendo Switch 2, and even footage that I recorded 4 years ago on the PlayStation 4 in the comparison shots. If I use footage from other YouTubers, I'm going to note it down below. First things first, you have to know what you're getting with this game. Part of what filtered me back then was that I was expecting a lighthearted adventure like a Zelda game with not much difficulty. And I guess this game could be that if you play it on the story mode difficulty, but I played it and am playing it now on the normal mode, which in this game is called the Spirit Guide. And the enemies are aggressive as hell in this mode, especially the bosses. You have a very good dodge mechanic that can get you out of trouble with the minor enemies, but if they land hits on you, you could end up seeing your health bar go down really fast. I can imagine the harder modes in this game being devilishly punishing. Maybe I'll get to them when I beat normal mode, but in getting back to the combat, after a while you're gonna gain access to a bow and arrow weapon. What's kind of cool about this one is that you do have infinite arrows, but once you spend all 5 of your arrows, there's going to be a short cooldown before you can shoot anymore. Later on, you're also going to get bombs, both of which you're going to be able to utilize to get through some of the little puzzles that this game has. One thing I thought was weird is how the combat works. You have standard light and heavy attacks, but they're mapped to the R and RZ buttons on the Nintendo Switch 2. I guess it was the same on the PlayStation 4, but this just feels very foreign to me. I'm so used to melee attacks like that being mapped to the face buttons. Visually, the game looks on par with and maybe even better than the PlayStation 4. Here I've got some of my own footage of a short run I did with the game on the PS4 back when it launched. Here's one of the bosses, and you can see here how pixelated it tends to get on the PlayStation 4. But as you can see in this comparison here, the Switch 2 edition has some reduced foliage in certain areas. Nothing that really matters, but unless you see it side by side like this, you never really would notice anything. For the most part, the game looks better on the Nintendo Switch 2. Mind you, I was running this on the slim PS4, not the Pro, so maybe that might have something to do with the PS4 footage being a bit lower quality. And now let's talk about the frame rate. I did a frame rate test on one of the more intense boss fights in this game, and what I found is the game tends to maintain a very steady 30 frames per second on the Nintendo Switch 2. It might dip for a little bit during intense moments, but for the most part it doesn't move away from 30. I blurred the name up top because the name of the boss is a bit of a story spoiler, so that's why it's blurred in case you were wondering. And since we're on the subject of bosses, if you play this on Spirit Guide difficulty, expect to get deleted a lot in this game. With the boss that you're seeing here, I probably got domed a good 7 or so times before I finally learned the timing for dodging and the best way to take him down. And again, this was just normal mode, but I am very satisfied with the performance of this game. The fact that it's not 60 frames, I guess, is a letdown for some people. On Twitter, inevitably you're gonna get the people who raise a stink about it. Someone said the game feels choppy. Like, I've been playing it for hours and I don't know what that guy's talking about. It feels smooth to me, but I do wonder what's going on under the hood in this game. It doesn't look like the game should have trouble hitting 60 frames per second on the Nintendo Switch 2, but it doesn't hit 60 on the PS4, the PS4 Pro, or the Xbox Series S. The PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X also run the game at a targeted 30 frames per second in quality mode, and they target 60 frames per second in performance mode. But even in performance mode, the game doesn't have a locked 60 frames. It still tends to drop into the low 50s during crazy moments. I don't see, just from looking at it, why this game would even need a performance mode on hardware like the PlayStation 5, the Series X, and really even on the Switch 2. As a layman looking at the game, it doesn't look to my eye like something even the old Nintendo Switch wouldn't be able to run, with some downscaling of course, but maybe there's something that I'm missing. The game also has a few trials that get unlocked after you defeat the first major boss. Actually, it was the boss that I just showed you in the frame rate analysis. After you beat that boss, you're going to get access to a set of trials that you can find behind one of the shrines. One of them is an archery challenge, and when I tell you that this tested the limits of my patience, dude, it probably took me an hour to get this one trial down. Every time I tried to do it, I could hit all the targets easily enough. The problem is that you have to do it in under 60 seconds, and almost every single time I would finish it, but I would be a few seconds over the limit. On one of my attempts, I was 1 single second over. And in one of my last attempts, I was literally less than a second over. The timer read 1:00 and the game still didn't give it to me. But eventually, by just getting used to the timing, running, and utilizing the slow motion ability, I was finally able to get it in 59 seconds. I wasn't recording when I did it, but I did use the 30-second record feature on the Switch 2 to capture the last 30 seconds of that run. And that is what you're seeing here. Currently, Kena Bridge of Spirits is only available on Nintendo Switch 2 digitally. As far as I'm aware, there has been no confirmation of a physical release. On the eShop, the game is currently on sale at $31, while the usual price is $40. So if you're gonna get it, now's the time to do it. I do highly recommend this game. Performance is not perfect, but really, what game ever is? It may not be 60 frames per second, but it is a very stable 30 FPS, which is not a bad deal at all. The visuals for the character models are still stunning even 4 years after its initial release, and the game's story can at times be very upbeat, and at other times can veer into somber moments dealing with somewhat mature themes. I think the Ember Lab team handled it very well, and I do hope the sequel, Kena Scars of Cosmora, makes its way to the Nintendo Switch 2 as well. That's gonna be it for today's video. I'm SwitchPlayed, done.